Well, hello. I'm getting our images ready for tonight, for tonight's peculiar conversation on all things beautiful and macabre. Um, Hi. Let's see here. So tonight, I will here I'll pull this up. So tonight we're going to talk about not everything will be in here, but this is this is the book that we have up on Kickstarter right now. Some of you may have this. We originally made it as a small paperback and then edited it, revamped it, and did it as a really nice large 9x12 hardcover. And they have done so well both times that they've sold out. So we're out of this book again. And the first printing had a red spine with black text, and now we are doing one with black silk and red text. But the internal materials are all exactly the same. So if you have this book, you do not need the second printing of the hardcover. If you don't have this book, hopefully after tonight's salon, you're going to want to run over to Kickstarter and pick it up, pre-order it. And if you do have it and love it, you can tell your friends. So what I'm going to do is just kind of go through some of the artworks that are in the book. I'm going to show this real quick. This is just a couple examples of what the of what it looks like inside the book. And so the thing that I was going after is there are a lot of times where you'll see an image and it's so beautiful and so sensual, but it's also very, very spooky. You know, look at her black coal eye makeup and the kind of emaciated, but just it's a great silent film image. And it's it's an aesthetic that I think we're all kind of familiar with. And the thing, so there are a lot of beautiful images in here. However, the things that I'm going to look at tonight are not as beautiful. Like these are all very lovely. And you understand immediately, oh yeah, beautiful macabre. That makes sense. I'll do one more here. This is this last one is it's got a famous artwork, which is the American version of this European poster. The one on the right is Joseph Fenneker from 1919. And then the one on the left is an American release. And it gets credited on the internet all the time as Joseph Fenneker, but it's not. I mean, it's very clearly a different art style. So one of the funny things is that so the things I'm going to be showing you tonight, a lot of them are things that didn't. There's some in here that did make it into the book and some that didn't. I'll start. I'm going to start right in with. I'll start in with this one because this is so beautiful. The artist is Privat Livemont, and a lot of people see his work and say, "Oh, that looks like Mucha," but they really were working at the same time. This is from, 1897, but his work from 1896 looks the same. And Mucha's work in 1895 was a little more Byzantine. So I think that it's possible that Mucha knew of Lievemont's work just as much as Lievemont knew about Mucha. So I don't know. That's not why we're here today. We're here today because on the streets of Paris, you could be walking to the grocery store and see these three heads on the right-hand side of the screen decaying from the blade shoved through the guy's eyeball. And then you'd just walk into your local market. It was we think today of clickbait. The periodicals in that day were clickbait farms. The things that we think of today, yellow journalism and clickbait, kind of the later 20th century versions of this. But the idea that the anarchists with their caps and white work suits, excuse me, oh my God. I'm in full disclosure, I was actually napping right before I came on. But the anarchists were kind of like a boogeyman. This kind of working class was a newer thing in Paris at the time. And the idea that these, unionized workers would rise up and drag the wealthy sophisticates of Paris out into the woods to murder them was something that would absolutely sell copies. So with this one, this incredibly rare poster, but I also find it really fascinating because even though it's clickbait, they just found such an interesting way to do the Mucha tendrils of hair and have it all be so romantically designed. The outlines of the trees, the shapes that make up where it's almost like a stage play with the foreground, but it's just still so horribly, horribly grotesque. Which leads then to another one that's from a periodical like that I can't believe this. I used to have this hanging above my bed, and it's let me see if I can. Yep. So, oops. I mean, that's pretty disturbing. So this was about, it was a poster promoting a story that talked about a rebellion that happened where all of these British soldiers were, I believe they were British, but in China, where they were all executed. And I have not read L'Homme Fatale. I actually have it, but I haven't read it because I loved this just for the art, again, for being so bizarre. But again, the idea that this would be glued up on the wall while your kid was walking around I mean, imagine, like, think about the video games that we don't want kids to play today, and then look at that. Um, it's just, it's a little crazy to me. I mean, I would say they turned out all right, but man, who really knows? But look at that. Oh my God. So part of the theme of tonight is this idea of, like, what were they thinking in terms of advertising? But this sold a lot of copies. A lot of people, again, it's like the true crime stuff today. People wanted to tune in to see it. And yeah, that's just so over the top. And I do think it's funny that I used to have this up. It would be, oh, excuse me, hard for me to do now. I have a 10-year-old. I've got a lot of stuff I don't put up. And kind of from that same era of clickbait, this one is in Beautiful Macabre. Actually, I'm going to go to the comments here just for a section. Oh, hi, Andrew. It's good to see you. The original paperback leaned really heavy into the macabre. The hardcover editions, we went the other way and leaned a little more into the beautiful. I don't even know how to get. Oh, there we go. Private chat. Okay. So this one is very strange. And there's a really nice story to go with this. So, Leo Taxiel was a charlatan and a hoaxer. And he came up with this series of books that were very, very anti-clerical. And this one, the debaucheries of the confessor, was one of the posters used to illustrate these pamphlets that completely, as you can imagine, made him persona non grata in the church. Like, you got this little old lady in the corner, like, well, what's he doing? Well, that's what he's doing. And so the thing that was really interesting about him is he did this for a few years, became very, very famous as a shit stirrer. And then one day had a complete epiphany and did a 180. And he said, I've been wrong. I'm a sinner, and started working in favor of the church. And he eventually did so for such a long period of time that he got invited to get an audience with the Pope. No sooner did that happen than he said, I was just kidding. And the thing he just wanted to see was, is the person who was making books like this one and the one I'm about to show you, could I, he was asking the question, could I be praised in the religious community? Could you come back from this? And when he did announce that this was a hoax, he did need police protection to be removed out of Paris. So this other one, the Mistresses of the Pope, did not make it into Beautiful Macabre. It will go into our Grand Guignol book. But I just felt like this is just, it's asking too much of people. You've got obvious, look at this guy's burning her feet. That's just horrific. There should be a trigger warning on this one, Kat, because tonight is just filled with death and blood. And then here's this I don't know, like Freddie Mercury's hanging out in the background. And this pasty bastard is like, I don't know what he's telling this half-naked chick. Like, one day all this will be yours. I don't know. But it's a beautiful lithography. Unbelievably grotesque subject matter. It's so crazy to me to know that this would have been hung up somewhere and that people would have scandalously run to go pick up a copy of this. There's no, what's the word? There's no academic content to these books. The books of Leo Taxil were like, you know, the romance novels that you'd buy at the supermarket, except that they were just taking the piss out of the church. So they were like very deviant romantic novels, you know, probably taking digs at political figures in the church. But yeah, so that the mistresses of the Pope. There you go. That's it. I mean, I don't know what to say. Yeah, this is crazy. And part of the thing with this book, Beautiful Macabre, is I did want it, like, it had the word beautiful in it. And I thought, oh man, like, I see the beauty in the art. I was like, but this just pushes it just a little bit too far. A little too far. So it didn't go in. And as another example of where beautiful and macabre did overlay a little bit nicely. I'm going to use this one. And so this was for a play. It's less shocking that this was on the streets. And the blood is less grotesque, but it's a little comedic. It's a little charming. You could see this being Will Ferrell as a serial killer or something like that. Charles Emile Landru, I think I'd first heard about him from a Twilight Zone episode where he was a wax figurine in a museum in one of the episodes. But he was a notorious serial killer who advertised in Lonely Hearts ads during World War I. And these women whose husbands were away would, or had been killed in war, I is what I should say, would have called him, and then he would lure them to their death. And there's a story that he killed one of their dogs. But yeah, look at that artwork. But it's just a little comedic. It was very much a Grand Guignol play kind of thing. And this to me was kind of a good example of the beautiful macabre boundary, because it felt a little bit more, you know, again, it's a little more comedic, a little less, you know, I'm sure that a psychiatrist could explain to me why this one didn't bother me as much as the other one. Speaking from an artistic point of view, I think it's because this has a different degree of realism. You know, it's not showing flesh being torn. It's showing, you know, I mean, it's very cartoony in comparison. Yeah, so there's something about it that feels a little more, I think also too, maybe the subject being a play, knowing that it was meant to be kind of scandalous in that way, whereas the other poster that we didn't use was really meant to freak people out. But yeah, so that's Landrew. And then I'll let me just move into something lighthearted here. And I'll go into the comments here. Dun, 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 dun. Did the Pope ask him to bring his flail? Oh my God. There's a book called oh my gosh, what is it? The Devil in the 19th Century that was on Kickstarter, and they're available now for purchase. And this woman named Orly translated all of the things that Taxiel had written about his explorations of the underworld, trying to reveal the sinister underbelly of the world where the devil liked to hide. And it's a super thick book, really interesting. It's kind of a lot. It's a lot to take in because he wrote like that for years and years. And then what happened is he held a press conference where he was going to introduce the woman who was the medium, the psychic medium that he'd been interviewing. And it turned out it was just his secretary, and they were just making everything up. And when they invited people into the press conference, they made everybody check their canes and umbrellas at the door because they were obviously expecting that people were going to be beating him with things. And so, yeah, the police had to escort him out of the city. So this is one that we did keep in. I'm not sure that it's beautiful, but in the same way that maybe it's not quite beautiful, it's also not quite macabre. The way that the book originally started were kind of like the heading for what Kat came up with tonight, which is the most shocking ads in history. I just, when I saw this poster, I had to buy it because I just thought, how horrible, how horrible is it that this poor little kid is just covered by roaches that are climbing into his breakfast. I just thought it is so, and the way people like to put food ads in their kitchen. Could you imagine putting this in your kitchen? It's just horrific. It's so horrific. But I love it. I think it's hilarious and bizarre and certainly good advertising. If we're talking about clickbait and we're talking about shock value, people remembered this name. I am certain they remembered this name. I mean, did you see that ad where the roaches are all over the baby and in his food? Like, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Pretty good if that's the job. All right, let me find so in the idea of the babies, so I got some dry skin there. I'm going to show you two right now. I'll do the one first that it was in, I believe this is, I'm almost positive this is in the paperback, but it didn't make it to the hardcover because I just felt like there were so many things that we were sharing in there that were just so dark. And, as beautifully drawn as this is, the idea of a kid with his dead parent felt a little, it's an anti-war poster, which is, it's wonderful and it's important. But we had in the soft cover, there were a lot of anti-war posters. The two things that seemed like they were getting really heavy were anti-war posters and like workplace accident posters. And when we made the soft cover, a lot of the workplace accident posters did not make it in, just because they didn't feel beautiful. They just felt, weird and gross. And this one, I loved the way it was drawn, but again, it was just like, it started to feel a little bit like, we took this one out, but then we put images like this one. Then we put images like this one in, just as a contrast. So like, it still feels macabre, it still feels spooky, but we were going a little more for the romance of it than just the heavy metal grotesque thing. And so then the other one that this one did make it in, but was in that same kind of realm, as far as being just so dark. I bought this so many years ago and never wanted to sell it. And I used to joke that when I had a kid, I was going to hang this in his bedroom when he was a baby. And the idea of death climbing in through the window and all these poor little unsuspecting children felt, very campy. But then when I had a baby, I was like, "Oh, that's a little dark. I don't even know, I don't even know that I want to joke about that." And yes, of course, you can joke about anything and everything, but not everything is for every time or every place. So, funnily enough, I never wound up hanging this up. Look at here. Look at this little guy. This guy right here. He's looking at you like, don't you hang this poster up. So this one did make it in. My choices could be considered questionable in many ways, but for this one, I thought it was such a great poster. And I think that, not to psychoanalyze myself, I think that something where it's like, oh, the parent's dead and there's a kid there, that's just what's happening. Things that had skeletons doing things, to me, felt a little more allegorical. And so I think that's part of why those things crept through a little bit. On that front, another war piece with no allegory, just monstrosity. This one, I'm 99% sure this one is in all the editions as well. There was something just very Game of Thrones about it to me. And the idea that you've got just this paper, the cream newsprint paper, and everything is just printed in black. And so the snow on the ground, the pale sky, the wind of the clouds, all of that, it's all just black and white, except for the flames of the wreckage from the war and the blood from the soldier that had been murdered, executed, killed in combat. He's got his, his helmet there. And then the crow holding up just that piece of flesh. I just thought this was so effective as an artwork. The Dutch artists from the 1890s all the way up through the 30s, it's just maybe even the 40s. Like, I just don't feel like there's ever a bad one. They're all so interesting and so illustrative in a way that makes me think a lot of what our best graphic novel artists kind of turned into. When you look at the cross-hatching here, if you look at the way these things get stylized and, like it's great. It's very, very cool. So if I was doing Beautiful Macabre over again from scratch, I probably wouldn't have put quite so much war things, but it's where it started. That idea kind of came first. The title came later, and then when we did the full hardcover, we had the opportunity to go back through and balance it a little bit differently. I put a lot more things that are kind of occult, strange, and weird, and beautiful, like in the way of that, Gothic looking women, and a little less of this material. And it's funny because the whole thing is that it's, the war images are meant to be shocking. I guess the thing that with all of these, the criteria when I was thinking about tonight is just the idea of what would you hang on the walls. And I think of like America, Uncle Sam pointing at the camera, you need to help us. And then you're in the Netherlands and they've got a body laying there with, vultures tearing the flesh away. Like it's pretty grotesque. It's pretty grotesque. It's bizarre that was their advertising campaign. Here's another one, is something that you see a lot in any kind of military posters, is the other, and the idea that different races, different people would be portrayed as beasts or creatures. This one was really interesting to me because when I looked at it, I thought, man, that art is great. And then I looked at who printed it, and it's kind of a silly thing if you haven't thought about this before. But when you look, this is printed by Oscar Conce. He printed all of Schnackenberg's cabaret posters. And so the thing that happened that was interesting is it made me realize, okay, this guy is a printer of things that kind of fit into the fine art category a little bit more. And so then I did start to look at the art a little bit differently in terms of, I felt validated, I guess is what it was. It was not that I didn't know that it was a great piece of art. It is that this is a lot of the stuff that Mike Mignola was a fan of. But when you look at the way the shading is and the illumination effects and that light outline instead of dark, I mean, all of these patches are just so beautifully, beautifully done that if this had been for a monster movie, I would think it would have been a hugely famous poster. Now, as it is, it is a very famous military poster. The idea that only chaos comes with anarchy, and it's meant to be a racist beast. You're supposed to be looking at the others with this, but the bomb, that a very popular anarchist tool, and then that dagger. And Julius, I'm sorry, this is not Julius Hussey. It's Engelhard, Franz Engelhard. But he did a lot of cabaret things as well. So when I made that connection, oh, this guy's done a lot of cabaret art. It's being printed by Conseil. It makes sense. It makes sense that it would be such a compelling and powerful poster. And then the last one that I had pulled, is it Julius Engelhard? It looks like an F. I'm going to check that out. I hope I didn't name the wrong artist. The last one that I pulled is another epitome of beautiful macabre. This is one of the ones that was a seminal point in saying, oh, I've got to do a book of this. And the idea here was they called it the French pox. And so the Netherlands were neutral during World War I. And the soldiers would be coming home from the front lines and they would have syphilis. And so all of these graves surrounding her feet, the mass slaughter of syphilis. The hecatomb is like an abattoir. It's a place where things go to die, almost in like a biblical ritualistic sense. But the fact that she's surrounded by these grave sites and holding this, skull over her erogenous zone, it's meant to be a deterrent. But I always laugh when I look at this poster because it's like she looks great. It's such an amazing spider hat. The tattered purple of her outfit looks cool. That poison green that in that time would have come from like uranium deposits and things like that. Like the green and the purple are just fantastic. It's like the Joker. And then that skull that's got the yellow, the festering bone. And so Rainmakers was so successful as a poster artist that his posters commenting on the war threatened Dutch neutrality. And Germany reportedly put a bounty on his head, and Dutch authorities eventually asked him to stop making propaganda posters because they were so effective. So this one doesn't speak to another country's problems as much as the problems that they were experiencing themselves. And he was Dutch. This was printed in Brussels, so they could have used it in multiple countries. But I know that he was Dutch. And there's the borders there are obviously very, very close. That is the grouping. I think I did all 10. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I did 11. I did 11 because I didn't know if I was going to show both of the Leo Taxiel posters. The Arbiters one. Kat asked me, what was this one talking about? And there's a panel at the bottom of some of these that's not here. This was a disarmament poster. That was something that the Dutch were very, very passionate about, was the idea of disarmament, which, you know, as they should. As they should. Let me pull up another disarmament poster here, if I can find one. I remember there's a band, Asia, from the 80s, and they had a them and Emerson, Lake and Palmer had a lot of songs about nuclear war, and I just remember some kid in grammar school saying something about, yeah, all of those British bands are really worried about nuclear war. I'm trying to remember how to spell disarmament in Dutch. Isn't it outwapening? Does anyone have any questions about this? Here we go. Is this? While I look for this image, it's not showing up. Kit. Let's see. Oh, wait, I've got a folder of ones that were removed from hardcover. Maybe I can pull some of those up. I didn't pull all these out, though. A lot of these are in there. Okay, here it is. Yeah, these disarmament posters are crazy, but I'm sure Kat knows which one I'm looking for. Where is that? I'm so sorry. All these languages. I need a better. Oh, yeah, it's not there. I was going to show the gas mask baby. That's what I was going to show. Oh, there you go. That's it. Yeah, I don't know why. I don't have it. Yeah, this one's very funny to me. Again, not in subject matter, but yeah, it was a call for disarmament, and the idea being that this is like the future that your children will be living in if you don't heed the this political call. So the other thing is, I guess something I didn't mention is that with a lot of these, they were connected to political parties. So of course, as in all things, you have someone who's, I don't know who's necessarily pro-war, but some people are everybody has their way of saying this is how it gets better. And with some of them, it says we need to, keep murdering until they're gone. And then that's one way. The other is we need to stop fighting. And so these, like a poster like this was, it was a call for peace. Yes, Cruella de Vil, join posters. There were some disinfection posters. There's one that's in the book, actually. that is, they did know about it. So I don't know at what point it was a fringe thing and at what point it was mainstream. This is for an antiseptic solution. And the idea that this maiden of health is driving away illness with this chemical. But I don't know how. This is a sociological question that I don't know. Like, was this considered fringe at that point? It's interesting to me when we see things like a poster for vegetarianism from the turn of the century, which I know wasn't something that in America became mainstream, but I guess I would say that I see these infrequently enough that it must have not been very mainstream. And some of them, this doesn't directly relate to your question, Andrew, but this poster, for example, for syphilis, which is also in the book, didn't choose to be frightening with it. The idea here was it was a sanatorium. The idea that you would be surrounded by nature and you've got the lily of purity. She's holding the serpent behind her back. And unlike the woman, I mean, you've got the same, like the purple rosacea looking type thing that the other woman had with the symptoms of syphilis, but it's on her back with the snake, and she's looking and moving toward this white lily. And she's presenting her, her face here as being super healthy. So the idea that you can conquer syphilis, but it's a radical cure, a sanatorium for syphilitics. So yeah, it is interesting. I'm sure that there are people who could talk at length about the sociology of disinfection. And there's a poster that's a really famous poster by Franz von Stuck for a hygiene exposition in 1911. It's just one of the best posters ever. So I know that they had expositions the way they had art expositions. The 1911 one is famous for two reasons. One, from a world of graphic design, it's just a famous poster. It's the Franz von Stuck eyeball. Let me see if I've got it on here. And but it also is the one where the Americans and British introduced Germany to the idea of oh my God, what is it? What's the word? Okay, what's the word? Eugenics. But yeah, so you've probably seen that poster. It's a great poster. Oh my God, it's so good. It's such a great poster. But it's pretty dark. There's a great book just on this exposition. And of course, there's things about hand washing and brushing your teeth and all kinds of great things that you should be learning about. But I always thought it was interesting because the Germans got the idea from us. It was a West Coast doctor and a doctor from London were the ones who were the biggest proponents of sterilization for the betterment of society. and the idea that culturally we should be engineering our gene pool. So it's pretty dark. But anyway, that's our little side talk into hygiene. But I love this poster. I love this. I have this up. It's just been copied ad infinitum. Chandra just chimed in that she noticed it all over Halloween decorations last year. I think a lot of people think of it like a Masonic thing or in a spooky floating eyeball kind of thing. I see this a lot as people's social media circle things. I've seen it more than once. I've seen it a lot in weird places like, like on a cigarette lighter or some things where you could just kind of print an image. Like Kat says, on random knickknacks. And it makes me laugh because I'll if you see it on like a cigarette case, to be like, no, that's like an anti-smoke. I guess they all smoked in 1911, but it is meant to be the eye of good health, not not unreasonably terrible behavior. But that is, Chandra mentioned the Lysol poster. I'm sorry, I keep going out of focus. My depth of field is really narrow. So as I'm moving into working on this stuff, it goes out a little bit. This I'll show you this one too. This isn't necessarily a macabre thing, but just because we're talking about health things, this is one that is very, very interesting to me. It's a fan poster, and our relationship with air conditioning and fans is obviously just so deeply and completely ubiquitous in every day of our lives. But the idea that in 1900, because I looked up this model of the fan when it was made, and I think that because of the release of the book they're promoting here, which was an edition of Dante's Inferno, I think it was 1902 is what I was able to directly connect this to. If I do this, will it zoom in? Nope. Okay. How do I do this? I'm in the PDF thing now. Oh, here it is. Okay. But yeah, I was able to find out literally that model of fan and find pictures of it. And so it's a little macabre because of the, Dante's Inferno, but the idea that this fan was so strong that it could drive away the heat of hell. I'm sure that Southern Italy was probably very happy to see that. But, just the idea that here we go. The reason that fit in with hygiene to me is because it's one of those things when you think about germs and you think about our living spaces and you think about the internal ecosystems, that things like reducing temperature, that falls under that hygiene and health umbrella. And so I do find it interesting when something like that is as beautiful as that poster was. And the Italian posters are just always so well done. That's one that we did a really nice 2-page spread for in the hardcover as well. I really, really love that one. And that's it. We did more than 10. It's funny. I was thinking, we're going to get out of here right in an hour. I think, was it last night or 2 nights ago? 2 nights ago, I did a Comic Art Fans live stream, and I think they normally try to be around 2 hours, and their record prior to me being on was 3 hours and I think 3 minutes, 3:05 maybe. And I took them to 3 hours and 23 minutes. So if you're interested, go look Comic Art Fans Live, and I talk about Dave McKean and Bill Sienkiewicz and Jeremy Bastian and all these really wonderful artists. But Kazra, one of the owners of the company, he's very chatty as well. So he definitely asked a lot of great questions and kept me going. Andrew, I'm glad that you watched it, and yeah, it's still live, or it's still online on YouTube, Steve. Yeah, Andrew, I tried to pick ones that I thought were a little less expected, not trying to shock people, but just kind of thinking, like with Dave McKean, I was going to show a Sandman cover, and I thought, well, that's what everybody would show. Why not show his nitrate work, which I like better in so many ways? You know, it's funny. I didn't know Kazra well back then. We were both Chicago guys. But he's one of those guys that every time I meet him, like, I like him a little bit more. And then it reached a point, I don't know, many years ago, where we started really interacting on social media, and he's just got such a great business sense and such a passion for art and supporting artists that I feel like we're really similar. And every time I talk to him, that just gets reinforced. Like last night, I thought this really solidly. He was talking kind of spiritually about a lot of the reasons he got involved with Comic Art Fans. And I was like, man, that's exactly why I'm doing the things that I do. So, yeah, they're good guys, and they're trying to empower artists to find audiences that can support them from a collection point of view, but then also seeing the true reward as being people living with art. And the idea that we're of a generation where all of our art's on our screens and our phones, and people aren't living with a thing that someone made. And so I love that. I love that it's not, I'm here to sell. It's like, no. He said to me, if I can turn one person on to what it's like to live with art, to live with that excitement, live with that thing. I mean, you know, I'm embarrassed that it's still packed, but like I mentioned that Andrew had sent me that postcard that he drew, knowing that that was something he was looking at on that day at that time. That's a huge connection. Well, then what happens when that's all over? This person wrote a story, this person drew it. Maybe it is a superhero story, but maybe it's something that meant something to you. You know, so anyway, I love that they do that. I actually don't have the tome books, to be honest. I don't remember why. Yeah, I don't remember why. I think that at the time there was something, I'll ask Kazra. He's got some. Yeah, I don't remember why. I think it was just something at the time that I think there were a couple artists in there that I wasn't as fond of, and I kind of wasn't sure. And it was expensive enough that I just thought, man, what if this winds up not being great? And I also think at that point, like I'll buy a lot of things now to support someone, but the thing that was hard for me, or is continually hard for me, is just, I mean, it's a joke. We talk about this with art, like there's always more room. Like I'm so out of room when it comes to books and bigger books like that. I definitely feel like there's a big thinning coming. Not that there aren't great books, but there's so many things that I have that are just don't ever get looked at. So that might have been part of it too, is I think I was kind of I felt like, like I love Giger, but I don't have his books. Love Giger. But it's like, there's something about it that I'm not going to sit and look at it. I don't know why. I'd love to have one of his paintings, but I just got a bunch of Japanese books today that I ordered. And it's hard, man. The books are small and I love the art so much, but it's hard for me to look at those art books. Anyway, that's a whole other thing. So that's part of why I make books, is because I make the books that I feel are like the great way to experience books. Like the Beautiful Macabre one, to me, is like the perfect size. I love the Big Le Pater book, but man, when I get one of those big books in the mail that I bought from someone else, I'm always like, oh man, this is fucking terrible. They're hard to read. They're better to read. But I did just buy an easel that'll be here soon to be able to read larger books, specifically to deal with that. And now we're officially over time. That was an accident, but a good one. Thank you guys for being here. Andrew, thank you for your super nice note the other day. I hope that you devour this paperback and can then be precious just to look at some of the images with your big one. But yeah, thanks everybody for being here. There's the thing that we always say that I'm not going to say tonight, but yeah, if you come into the Discord. I've been traveling a lot with Caligula stuff, so I haven't been in there, but we've been doing some interesting things in there. I've seen some incredible movie recommendations. But that's it for tonight. Thank you so much for being here. You're all very appreciated. And we will, as Kat just put in there, October 3rd is the next first Thursday. And so we'll see you guys there. And message us on Patreon with what you think we should talk about. If there's anything that you're curious about, it's a great format for me to go into detail about things that might be publicly a little more boring, but that kind of on an insider level that you guys really want a deep dive in. And I'm very happy to do that. So if there's anything that I've been working on that you can think about sharing in that way, please let us know. And aside from that, thank you everyone for being here. And we'll talk really soon. I'll see you in a month. Bye-bye.